Welcome to Open BXRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Due to the pandemic and shutdowns, businesses along 161st Street have struggled immensely. Yankee Stadium, which once brought thousands of fans to these businesses, has been closed to the public. The community now asks the Yankees to help. Joining us now to share more about a petition against the Yankees is Cary Goodman, Executive Director of the 161st Street Business Improvement District. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Goodman.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Of course. So, first things first, how has the 161st Street Business Improvement District supported and provided resources for businesses along your corridor during COVID-19?
Okay, so we started just as the pandemic started, alerting our businesses to grant opportunities, loan opportunities. We continue to provide the services that we do in the district, which are basically sweeping the streets and trying to keep it a cleaner, sort of a healthier, friendlier place. But of course, the businesses have rent and they have property taxes. And as you mentioned, there are no fans there to support their economies. So we help them by trying to provide them with access to what the city had of about $50 million in grants and loans. Unfortunately, of that $50 million, not one of those dollars came to our district. And the Bronx, the overall Bronx, only got 1% of the money. So despite the fact that we had met with the Commissioner of Small Businesses and explained to him, you know, these are unique businesses. They're like what we call seasonal businesses. Like if you go somewhere for the summer, the place is bustling during summer, like the Hamptons. And then in the off season, when people aren't going swimming in the ocean, when they're not going to Yankee Stadium for a baseball game, there's very little business to be had. So our guys had gone through already 6 months of, you know, fallow business time, nothing going on. That's the winter and the late fall for them. And then just as the spring came on, the revenues that they typically get for being open for the baseball season were first postponed and then canceled.
Right.
So they are suffering tremendously. All of our businesses are small family-owned businesses. Many of them have been there 2 or 3 generations, some going back as far as 90 years. And they make up the social fabric of what it means to go to a Yankee game. You know, when people come from Japan or California or Connecticut or even, you know, another part of the Bronx and they get to Yankee Stadium, there's a whole sort of ambiance about it where you're walking under the L, somebody says you want to buy some peanuts, there's another place you can go have a beer, over here you can get a discount on a t-shirt. There's certain joy and liveliness about being so close to the stadium and baseball lovers. So unfortunately, what's happened now is that the fact that these businesses haven't been getting the money from the fans, they're way behind in their rents, they're way behind in their property tax payments, and they're on the verge of going out of business, of extinction. Which, you know, ordinarily, I know there are a lot of stores, a lot of businesses all over the country that are having difficulties and are closing up. Some of the biggest stores, you know. But in this case, it's not just the stores, it's the fact that they're the sort of the heart and lungs of the neighborhood. And the neighborhood itself, well, can you think of New York without Times Square? Can you think of New York City without Greenwich Village? Shouldn't be able to think of it without Yankee Stadium and the neighborhood around it. And that's what's happening. You know, there's a threat for it to become something other than what it's been these 9 decades. And that's why we're working so hard to help them out.
Right. And the 161st Street bid has a petition against the Yankees. Can you tell us more about it and why this petition is being pushed now?
Yeah, sure. So as the pandemic hit, we approached the Yankees and alerted them to the fact that our businesses were going to be in dire straits. And we had worked with the Yankees a few months earlier. Nike, talk about petitioning, Nike wanted to cut out all the jerseys and t-shirts and sort of sportswear that our businesses sell and make it only available inside the stadium and online to Nike. So we approached the Yankees and said, hey, these businesses are an important part of the, as I said, the atmosphere of the neighborhood. would you help us try to negotiate a different deal with Nike? And they did, and we won. And so out of all the cities where there are baseball stadia and stores that sell stuff, ours are the only ones that were grandfathered or grandmothered in as a clause to be able to sell their gear. As soon as they got that approval, they bought hundreds of thousands of dollars of merchandise, but then the pandemic came a couple of weeks later and they're just sitting there. So they owe rent, they owe taxes, they owe money for inventory. The bars bought beer, the beer's already stale. The restaurants bought food. So we went to the Yankees and said, we had the successful working relationship with the Nike issue together. How about setting up a fund or doing something where you have a new lineup of instead of a shortstop or a pitcher, a lineup of small businesses and community organizations that in this tragic time, the Yankees will support with grants. And you know what they came back to us with? Nothing. So we waited a few months, we talked to more businesses, we talked to more people, and we found out that in addition to the fact that the Yankees weren't giving us any money, they were getting a tremendous amount from the city itself. They're getting free fire, police, sanitation, traffic. In fact, they even have a police station in the stadium. There are no fans, so I don't know why you would need, officers in there, but they have a station in there. And they're not paying any taxes. They're not paying any property taxes. They're not paying, except for $1 a year rent. So they're getting, and as far as giving, there's almost nothing. I mean, they are required by the terms of their moving into the new stadium, which was moved onto city parkland. So the Yankees agreed that every year they'd give away roughly $1 million to groups that are doing great work, different schools, the blood bank, boys and girls clubs, hunger pantries and so forth. That's wonderful. But, that was the sort of the trade-off of allowing them to move the stadium. Beyond that, they're not doing anything. They haven't contributed any money to small businesses. They haven't contributed any money to our local hospitals. So, this is a time when we felt it needed to be publicized, it needed to be brought out. We asked them a second time for money. Again, they never got back to us. We said, we've got to go public with this.
Very recently, the Yankees also gave away some paraphernalia or some clothing, some merchandise for people to go and get tested. But clearly that's not enough. What you're asking for now is for the Yankees to help the businesses along the corridor with the money that they clearly have, to help out. You've also proposed that the Yankee Stadium be used as a voting site for the upcoming elections. Can you tell us more about this idea?
Sure. Well, let me just clarify on the contributions that the Yankees are making. Nobody's saying it isn't great that they give out backpacks or that they help out with contributions. That's wonderful. That should be a part of a policy of a corporation that has $5 billion of value. But if they were to be paying their fair share of taxes, property taxes, on a stadium that's more than 1 million square feet and rent, they would be contributing to the neighborhood, to those institutions and the small businesses, $150 million at a minimum per year. And those aren't my calculations. That's by the Independent Budget Office of New York City. So you can say, yes, it's great that the Yankees are giving some money, but they are giving less than 1% of what they would be legally required to give through taxes and rent, if not for this sweetheart deal that they were able to negotiate with the former mayor. So that's a problem. And the other thing I should say, going to the voting rights issue, is that New York City owns Yankee Stadium. The Yankees don't own it, we do. So if we feel a pressing need, especially again in a time of pandemic when people are worrying, if I mail in my ballot, is it going to count? Will it get there on time? Will I get it on time? Is it going to be lost? Is it going to be, there's a lot of turmoil in people's minds about voting. Go to Yankee Stadium, drop in your ballot. That's all you got to do. They're doing it in Brooklyn with Barclays. They're doing it in Manhattan with Madison Square Garden. So you would think the Yankees would recognize, as a part of being a good corporate citizen, let's make this stadium available. we still haven't gotten approval for that.
You haven't heard back yet from the Yankees on that proposal either?
Not at all, right. You
Mr.
could say
Goodman,
we're sort of an organization in waiting. We're waiting to hear about them making a contribution. We're waiting to see if they're going to pay their taxes and their rent. And we're waiting to see if they're going to let Bronxites exercise their democratic rights by voting inside Yankee Stadium.
right. Now, can you tell us about just the importance of holding institutions such as the Yankees accountable and why people should join causes like these in the community, especially during these tough times?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's not just pick on the Yankees. I was born in this neighborhood. I'm a Yankee fan. They're not the only ones who are bad actors in this situation, but the Mets aren't paying taxes. The Knicks aren't paying taxes. So there's a lot. In fact, if you added up all the money that the city is not collecting in taxes from corporations like the Yankees or if you go down River Avenue, you get to the mall, the Gateway Mall or Bronx Terminal Market Mall, where BJ's is and Best Buy, and it's just enormous, 149th Street. They pay no taxes either. But if you added up all those tax gifts, let's just call them, the city would have, ready for this, $1 trillion extra. We wouldn't have to go begging to Washington for $5 billion, or I know Governor Cuomo has mentioned an even bigger number that the state needs. No, if we just took care of our own tax responsibilities and didn't make it sort of a sweetheart deal for these huge corporations to take advantage of, we could handle all the economic needs of the neighborhood. So it's really important for people to come to the rally, to sign a petition, to get engaged so they can have a framework or a landscape to look at this terrible pandemic from. It's not just a virus. It's an economic virus. It's an unemployment virus. And it can be traced to the tax policies that we have established in the city over the last few decades.
Right.
Not even only de Blasio's fault. There's a whole history of mayors making concessions to big corporations. The Amazon deal that luckily fell apart at one point out in Queens, where they wanted to put in their second national headquarters. And that was the birth of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's campaign and her success as a community leader, because she saw through the idea of using money to build a helipad for the world's second or third, or maybe he's the first richest person in the world, while the people in the projects across the street, were suffering from lack of heat and unemployment and a whole host of, bad numbers.
Right. And then those things are now affecting this area during COVID-19, the health issues that people face with Asthma Alley here in Mott Haven, the fact that the headquarters is now here, another headquarters of Amazon down the block. So again, Mr. Goodman, thank you for your time today. Unfortunately, this is going to be airing after the protest that's taking place Thursday. However, there is a petition available online if you're interested in learning more. How can people find out more about the petition?
Sure. Just go to change.org and click Defund the Yankees.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Goodman, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you. And hopefully when people see this, they'll be celebrating, because Thursday will have been such a huge success.
Yes. We'll be sure to air the protest on BronxNet as well as soon as we get there. We will be there to support. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Sonyi.
We'll be right back with Open BXRx.